He loved her. And she loved him.
Well, that just happened. While Aegon Targaryen's incestuous boat rocking with his Aunt Daenerys caught some people off guard, the show has been building toward this moment since its first episode. The book series Game of Thrones is officially titled A Song of Ice and Fire. This is likely a reference to Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. Across 7 seasons, their storylines mirror each other almost exactly. What happens to one happens to the other. Even the characters on the show were pointing out their similarities.
You were the first to bring Dothraki to Westeros. He is the first to make allies of wildlings and Northmen.
Many of these events visually parallel each other and began before they were even born. They were both the third child, their mothers died in childbirth, and they were Targaryen refugees hidden from Robert Baratheon.
I'll kill every Targaryen I get my hands on.
In the first episode, we're introduced to each character alongside their siblings. Daenerys is often abused by her brother, and Jon is hated by Catelyn, Ned Stark's wife. But I mean, you would too if proof of your husband's infidelity lived in your house. That's messed up. In the first episode, they each receive an animal that represents their houses. Daenerys gets dragon eggs, and Jon gets a cute little dire wolf puppy. Later, they each acquire tools to defeat White Walkers, dragons and a Valyrian sword, each time with a member of House Mormont present. The first episode features banquets where both characters feel like outsiders. Daenerys is entering an arranged marriage with Khal Drogo, the first man to make Guy Liner look terrifying, and Jon, being illegitimate, has to stay outside the hall while his family throws a pretty badass party for the king. And soon after, they both leave home, Jon for the Night's Watch and Daenerys to travel with the Dothraki. They form friendships with outcasts from great houses, Samwell Tarly and Jorah Mormont, and they're both mentored by a Mormont. They both become assertive in their social groups, as Jon warns everyone to stay away from Sam, and Daenerys tells her brother,
"The next time you raise a hand to me will be the last time you have hands."
Soon after, they both lose a family member, Jon's uncle Benjen and Daenerys' brother Viserys. They're fully initiated when Jon takes the vow of the Night's Watch and Daenerys eats an entire horse heart. After tragedy strikes their heads of household, they must choose between their families and upholding an ethical code. Jon chooses not to abandon the Night's Watch, while Daenerys disobeys the laws of nature when she asks a witch to use blood magic to keep Drogo alive. Later, she has to go full cuckoo's nest and smother him with a pillow. They each end the first season venturing into the wilderness. She steps through fire and he passes through a wall of ice. They each begin season 2 underneath a comet, which may indicate that one or both of them could be Azor Ahai, the prince who is prophesies to end the long night, which is a fancy way to say someone who is really good at killing zombies. So they take refuge from the wastelands and havens that secretly harbor evil magic. Craster's Keep provides baby boys to the White Walkers, which explains their sexist hiring practices, while in Koth, Xaro and the House of the Undying conspire to kidnap her dragons. They meet and join warriors who have abandoned their homes, Ser Barristan and Mance Rayder. At different points, both Jon and Dany fall in love with someone from a different culture. Their lovers die from chest wounds and are burned in funeral pyres. Dany joins Drogo in the fire, while Jon, who blames himself for Ygritte's death, stays distant and cold. They find surrogate families to replace the people they've lost. Jon has his brothers of the Night's Watch, and Daenerys is called Mother by the slaves she liberates. They fight battles that place them in leadership positions. Afterwards, they're forced to execute people who don't obey them. They find governing difficult and are forced to make compromises to keep the peace. Jon allies with the wildlings while Daenerys reopens the fighting pits. Both liberate people from hardship. Daenerys frees hundreds of thousands of slaves while Jon gives the wildlings the freedom to go south of the wall. He's the only member of the Night's Watch who calls them by their chosen name, the Free Folk. Doing the right thing causes them to be ousted from power. Temporarily. The Sons of the Harpy chase Daenerys away from Meereen while Jon is assassinated by the Night's Watch. In their absences, their friends work to assure their return. Ed looks for help from the wildlings while Tyrion makes peace with the slavers. Tyrion and Varys ask a Red Priestess to praise Daenerys in the streets, while Davos also recruits a Red Priestess, Melisandre, to raise Jon from the dead. Daenerys and Jon have both passed naked through fire, though his fire resurrection was metaphorical and she literally passed through fire, twice. They both burned down buildings where women were enslaved, Vostoth Rock and Craster's Keep. Aided by cavalry, they regain power with the help of people that they freed from oppression. Afterwards, their opponents' banners fall. At some point, they each experience a spiritual resurrection. Jon is surrounded by people fighting to survive, while Dany is surrounded by people given new life. They both embrace their birthright, as far as they know, when Jon is crowned King of the North and Daenerys sails for Westeros. Afterwards, they form war councils that disagree on tactics. Daenerys maneuvers for the Iron Throne, while Jon fights the White Walkers. Soon they meet with the only other living Targaryen, overcome mutual distrust, and devote themselves to fighting the White Walkers together. After Jon Snow bends the knee, you know the rest. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.